Hello and welcome, Stargazers. This is APM, your intrepid star guide and cosmic detective, and this is another episode of the Outlaw Astrology podcast. And today we're going to be talking about the Suit of Swords. It's about mental clarity and the blade of truth. And so this is the third suit in the minor arcana, and this is a specific dive, and we're going to be talking about the suit of air. We're going to explore intellect, communication, conflict, truth, and the cutting edge of mental clarity from the ace through 10. A short housekeeping note: this is a four-part main arcane exploration with cups as the final suit to explore, and these episodes, if you like to read, are available for free on the newsletter, The Daily Stargazer. And there is a free and a paid version. You can find more information on that in the show notes. And we're available you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Amazon Audible Podcasts, etc. Those links are in the show notes, and you can find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Pinterest. Links also in the show notes. And with that being said, thank you very much for being here, and onward. So, the reason why we're talking about this is because we can layer over the tarot cards. We can bring in some astrology if you're into that. You can do that with oracle cards as well. But this is how we're going to work it. So let's start with the element of air. This is the essence of swords. And so the air's core qualifiers are thought, reason, communication, discrimination, that's discernment, and the power of the mind to analyze and discern. Now, air represents the realm of ideas, language, truth-seeking. These are mental constructs, and it's a double-edged sword. That is the nature of intellect. That is the nature of thinking. It is both liberating and wounding. Much like the wands, you're going to notice, if you own a deck of cards, that the suit of air, much like the suit of wands, is very cautionary. There is a cost to thinking. There is a cost to energy and vitality represented by the fire suit. And so today we're stepping into that cautionary tale from the suit of air. Now that connects to the astrological signs. This would be the air signs. And there are three: cardinal, fixed, and mutable. My brain really just loves to mix words with other words and then create things that don't make any sense. But we're going to go with that today. I think Mercury might be enjoying its movement into the retrogradation period, so that might be it, and if not, it's just that I'm having a day. So, we're going to connect air to the astrological signs, and we're going to start cardinal. So, Libra is the cardinal air sign, and it's balanced judgment, right relationship, because Venus is about relationship, but at Libra, it's right relationship to whatever, for example. And Aquarius, that's fixed air, that's visionary ideals. And Gemini, mutable air, is flexible, curiosity, and inquisitiveness. And so the suit of swords is the knowing and the cutting through. The reason why we say cutting through and why swords are represented as this suit, although I do notice in other lineages of tarot that sometimes this is not the case. The reason why it's a sword is because swords cut. Why is that important? Because the word decision comes from a Latin word which means to cut. So when you make a choice, you are choosing one option over another, and it means you have to cut that other option out if you're going to follow this one. And our nervous systems don't like letting go of plenitude, abundance. If you have a lot of ideas, cutting some of those ideas, your brain's like, your nervous system and brain are like, wait a second, we might actually need those in the future. It doesn't understand that cutting is metaphysical and metaphorical, that you're not really killing something, but to your nervous system, discomfort is read as a threat, and a threat is a threat to one's survival, to one's continuing to be. So that's why the suit of swords is about knowing and cutting through. So when you see it in the major arcana, when you see a sword or a knife, what it's saying is you have to use judgment here. You're going to have to cut, and that is going to be an uncomfortable process. And so knowing and cutting through equates to the journey of seeking truth, facing conflict, and learning when clarity becomes cruelty, because clarity is another way of saying certainty. The suit of swords, the cautionary tale about it is that those swords are sharp and they can cut the person doing the cutting as well as the person they're cut, the person or the thing that's being cut, figuratively speaking. Okay, so clarity is also certainty. And the subtle message of the suit of swords is this. Whilst it, yes, it can cut both ways and people can be hurt, clarity, certainty it's very cautious. It's wise to be cautious about certainty. It's wise to be cautious about what we are convinced is absolutely the truth. What we believe to be true, because we believe it does not make it factual, merely that we believe it. It is real to us and valid to us, and others may not agree, and we will see that in the suit of swords, the same way we see conflict in the suit of wands. Okay, so let's start with the narrative arc of the suit of swords. We're going to go ace through 10. These are going to be brief. We are not pushing into it excessively. What we are doing is simply giving a immediate, quick way to start us understanding. This is not meant to be deep and immersive. I mean, deep and exhaustive, per se. So this Ace of Swords is pure mental clarity. It is that breakthrough insight. It is that moment when you were stuck, confused, in the dark, and all of a sudden, light dawns. And suddenly we see everything clearly. And that is a breakthrough insight. That's the ace. The sword of truth piercing through illusion or confusion. And this is the Ace of Swords. Moving on to the Two of Swords. And this is where, I should say, the aces of all of the suits will always represent every one of the air signs. And so the Ace of Swords is Libra, Aquarius, Gemini, because aces are ones, and that is the beginning of a journey. It hasn't coalesced into anything yet. And so we are here with a lot of potential, a lot of possibility. So the ace corresponds to the mage card. And that is true of all the aces in every single suit. All of the cards, 1 through 10, can be affiliated, corresponded to the major arcana counterpart. So 0, except for the 0, which is the Fool, ace starting from the mage all the way out to the world, it all corresponds, for example. And in some cases, the numbers will double, because we're going from 1 to 9. At 10, we're back to a number 1 again, and that is the mage. At number 19, which is the Sun card, that goes 1 plus 9 is 10, 10 plus 0 is 1, it goes back to 1, that makes it a mage. The first 4 cards thereabouts, maybe 5, thereabouts, have that tripling effect, okay? And so, it is when we get to the Two of Swords, the moon starts to, is it Moon Libra, first decan. Now, considering that, if you don't understand, it will make sense, but you're going to need to go back to the beginning of the series and listen to that, because this is by the wheel of year. So, we start with Mars, and we start like this. The planets go according to how fast, how slow they move to how fast, starting with Saturn and going all the way to the moon. The outer planets were not part of the system at this point and so are not used. That is not to say they cannot be, they're simply not used in this particular system, which is Thelema, which is an occult system by a bunch of ceremonial mages, of which Aleister Crowley and Pamela Coleman-Smith, etc., and Lady Frida Harris were all members of this particular ceremonial group of mages called the Golden Dawn, okay? And so we're starting at Moon and Libra, but if you want to know more, as I said, I explained it in a previous episode. So we go from Saturn all the way to the Moon. We're at the Moon. And so the Two of Swords is Moon and Libra, first decan. And the decan, we've explained this, but briefly, it is just 10 degrees of the zodiac. Each sign is chopped up into 10 degrees. The first decan goes from 0 to 9, the second goes from 10 to 19, the third goes from 20 to 29, and you break up the signs like that. Okay, so first decan, peace, temporary truce, the tension of balanced opposition, and choosing not to choose, because literally, if you want, also I would suggest, if you have your deck, look at your Rider-Waite-Smith deck. If you do not, you can always Google or Bing or what have you these cards, and it'll pull up an image for you. And so the Two of Swords usually features a seated person blindfolded with their two swords across their chests crossed, and that's conflict, etc. So first decan. Three of Swords is Saturn and Libra. That would be second decan. The keywords for that would be sorrow, heartbreak, the necessary pain of acknowledging difficult truths. The Four of Swords is Jupiter and Libra, third decan. Because, as I've said, there's a structure to this. We chop up the 10 cards, excluding the ace, from 2 all the way to 10, into 3 different card groupings, and each card will be given to the air sign that corresponds. So 2, 3, and 4 will be cardinal air. 5, 6, and 7 will be fixed air, and 8, 9, and 10 would be mutable air, and this system goes across all of the minor arcana. So continuing on, Four of Swords, Jupiter and Libra, third decan, it's truce, rest after battle, mental recuperation, and strategic withdrawal. Five of Swords, Venus and Aquarius, first decan, defeat, hollow victory, winning at the cost of connection and integrity. Six of Swords is Mercury and Aquarius, second decan. It is science, moving towards clarity. It's leaving troubled waters with hard-won wisdom. Seven of Swords is the Moon in Aquarius, third decan. Futility, strategic retreat or deception, the limits of cleverness without grounding. Okay? Eight of Swords, Jupiter and Gemini, first decan, interference, mental imprisonment, bound by thoughts, yet holding the key to freedom. Nine of Swords, Mars in Gemini, second decan, cruelty, anxiety, the mind's capacity for self-torture through worry and rumination. Ten of Swords, Sun in Gemini, third decan. It's ruin, it's the darkness before the dawn, it is a complete mental collapse that paradoxically can clear the way for rebirth. So, the overarching story here, we go from clarity through balanced peace, through the necessary sorrow, the rest, the hollow, Pyrrhic victory is what that is another name for that, the strategic movement, mental traps, anxiety, ultimate dissolution that teaches us the mind must die, figuratively and metaphorically speaking, in order to be reborn. As I've also said, it is a cautionary tale that the mind and using the mind, it's a tool. It is not necessarily us, as Alan Watts points out, because we can observe it. And what can be observed isn't typically considered us. I look at a cup, for example, my mug, one of my favorite mugs. It's a lovely blue mug, almost lapis blue color, gorgeous color. I love lapis lazuli stones, and it has that kind of look to it. I am observing it right now. It is not observing me back as far as I know because it is considered an inanimate object. So I am perceiving it, observing it, what it does, but it is a subject, an object to be observed. And so Alan Watts points out that observation of a thing means you're a subject, and so if I can observe my thoughts, then those thoughts cannot be said to be me. They are a part of the framework that is part of my internal process. And so the point I'm making here is that we are very attached to the stories our minds tell us, and the suit of swords has a cautionary tale. The mind is meant to be a tool. It is not meant to be a master. It is meant to be a servant. It is not meant to tell us what to do. It is meant to guide us and support us and hopefully encourage, if we have encouraging voices and believing mirrors in our childhood and adolescence when we are more vulnerable to conditioning. And so the mind can be conditioned. That is also part of the cautionary tale. The mind can be conditioned to do all sorts of things, say all sorts of things, believe all sorts of things. But it doesn't make those things true. And so the mind's stories can help us or hinder us, benefit us or be to our detriment. And so how could we possibly, based on that narrative, based on what I've just said, that's what's cautionary about it, using the mind takes skill, takes experience. And a casual note, having nothing to do with tarot, but since I'm the sort of person who is curious and has lots of questions and runs down research and investigates constantly, is that my own experiences with the mind is that, and part of this story is that learning how to use ours, learning how to weed out the bugs, how to get the most out of the features, and to understand the difference between a bug and a feature. For example, our minds, our brains are in adolescence from the age of the age of 9 all the way to the age of 32. That is adolescence for our brain. Age of 32 on, our brain goes into its peak maturation period, and will do so until the age of 66. So, the mind before that point is like learning to drive a car, or learning to surf, or learning to do anything. You don't know what you're doing, and everything feels like everything's top of mind. By the time we get to the skill set level, the skill and the experience level that only comes through living, through walking through our lives, do we suddenly get how we could best use our minds, because our minds were indoctrinated and domesticated in ways that don't always serve us best. And that is the overculture we belong to, and that is the society that we find ourselves a part of, and also the tribal messages we receive. So that is another part of the aspect, is the word I meant, not faction, of the suit of swords. So, if you're reading for the suit of swords, we're going to be looking at timing. Now, you'll note I say Moon and Libra first decan. Okay, how would that work out? Well, first of all, if I have a question, it's like, hey, I am having a challenge in my life, and I don't know how to clarify the challenge. I don't know how to name it. How would I name it? Because naming it provides a sense of clarity for me and a sense of lightness. Okay, I have a name for it. Now I can start troubleshooting. And so the card I pull is the Two of Swords. That's the Moon in Libra, first decan. That would be 0 to 9 degrees. Let us say, because I follow the moon every bloody day of my life, it's present in the sky. It moves the fastest. It's quite fascinating. Easy peasy work if you want to follow a planet. That's the easiest one to mark. And so I'm doing that. And I notice that the moon is at 7 degrees of Libra, and we're not in Libra season per se, but, let's say it's January 2026, let's go there. So we're experiencing a Libra moon at 7 degrees of Libra in Capricorn season. Well, that would be squaring energy depending on where that sun happens to be. And so Capricorn energy with a Libra moon, that suggests an objective. And Libra energy is right relationship. It is building bridges. And the Two of Swords is about peace and harmony, temporary truce, tension of balanced opposition, choosing not to choose. So the problem that's being highlighted here is Librans love peace. Librans love balance. That energy is what they're creating is harmony, peace, balance. And how are we going to achieve that? Well, this card suggests temporary truce, yes, but it also suggests choosing not to choose, or maybe evading choice or avoiding choice. That's one way to go about it. But it highlights a lot of keywords here, which I can ask questions about. Okay, do I need to set this down for a little bit, choosing not to choose? Where is my peace being ignored or rejected, or where am I not feeling peaceful? And if I'm in a row with someone, is it possible that I could be doing a temporary truce to give my nervous system a chance to reset? Okay? And since it's Capricorn season, and everybody loves to set a goal during Capricorn season, because we're always looking ahead to the new year, and in the top of the new year, what we're going to be and do throughout the year, Capricorn season is about an objective, a single objective that we consistently, meaning steadily work towards, small goals, one bite, one chewy, relatable bite at a time. Okay? That's the energy. And so these energies don't play nicely together because cardinal Earth and cardinal air they don't play nice. They don't have a lot in common. There is going to be friction. That's not a problem. Our nervous systems tell us it's a problem, it's a threat, but it isn't. So this card is saying, hey, maybe a temporary truce should be wise here if it protects our peace. We're not saying here that what we want is constantly protecting our energy at the expense of ourselves and our primary relationships. We're simply saying that for the time being, to maintain that peace within ourselves, perhaps a temporary truce might be a good idea. Or it also highlights the tension of opposition or friction and discomfort. It's not necessarily a bad thing, so it's also an opportunity to retrain our nervous systems, of which the mind is a component, to feel safe with tension. So we might choose to get our nervous system acclimated in small daily ways that are low stakes, so our nervous system will be able to tolerate greater tension at times when it's most necessary. Okay, so that's how you might use that card in Capricorn season, and the moon is at 7 degrees. That 7 degrees is Libra energy, and so you're learning to build bridges. You're learning to ask, how do I protect my peace? How do I extend that peace, etc.? And so, when we're talking about practical reading with words, which is what this makes me think of, questions about thought and truth. So, the swords speak to questions. It's about communication, it's about decisions, about conflicts, about mental health, sometimes legal matters, truth-seeking, and intellectual study and clarity. Keeping in mind that clarity is, in and of itself, it is a caution. Clarity and insight are tools, and our brains love certainty. And the caution of that is certainty can lead to a lot of bad decision making. Okay? And so we're going to hear a few examples. So let's say someone says, how do I handle this argument? And draws the Six of Swords. Well, the Six of Swords is a person, 3 persons in a boat. The 3 people, you cannot see their faces 2 are hooded and slumped in the front of the boat. The third, is a person that appears to be pushing the boat, rowing the boat, moving the boat. And the waters are choppy. And what does this mean? That's basically what's on the card. So how do I handle this argument? It could be interpreted 6 of Swords, which is the Aquarius decan, and it's Mercury in Aquarius second decan. And recall, the keywords for that is science, moving toward clarity, leaving troubled waters with hard-won wisdom. Okay? So you could interpret that as leave the conflict behind with as much dignity and grace as you can. Use the wisdom that you've learned from this difficult situation to steer you toward calmer waters. Hence the choppy waters that is featured on the card, and the stooped postures of the 2 figures. One appears to be a child, the other could be any. It's an adult, but it could be any gender, okay? And they're stooped because they fought long and hard, and they've made a strategic retreat to seek out calmer waters. And that is how you can interpret that card. And let's say that it's Mercury in Aquarius, and it is the second decan of Mercury in Aquarius, which would be January, February, thereabouts. The second decan would start at 10 degrees. So we're going to put something at 11 degrees because that is the 11 is the Aquarius energy, the 11th side of the zodiac, you get the picture, and Mercury in Aquarius. So this would be an opportunity. You pull this card, it's an opportunity to focus. You could put this on your altar, and the card would be an anchoring reminder to apply Mercury in Aquarius, which, by the way, is in its exaltation. Aquarius exalted in Mercury exalted when in Aquarius, okay? And so you could use it as an opportunity to focus on this card. It would give an opportunity to focus on science, and also how to use strategy, how to use your mind as a tool properly, not just to seek insight and clarity, but to steer yourself from choppy waters, meaning emotional waters, toward clarity. Water in the tarot represents emotion, and if their waters are choppy, it means that the emotions are not calm. So perhaps stepping back and being a bit more objective as one can, and trying to pull in that reason might calm things a bit. It'll disrupt the cycle of emotion, which will allow us to access the ability to make decisions from our prefrontal cortex. Okay, so that is one way that it could be interpreted. So once again, the 6 of Cups, you're having difficult conversations here. You're using your wisdom to move to calm. So to go into timing a little further, you can also use seasons, and each of the elements in the tarot correspond to a season. Now, I should note that lineage-wise is going to differ depending on what lineage the person is using, if they even know it. And so swords can be many different things. Now, here's how I see it. Fire is summer. Earth is spring. Air is autumn. Water is and waters. Darn it, I've muddled this. I didn't mean to say any of that. So let me try this one more time. Water is spring. Air is autumn. Fire is summer. Earth is winter. Now, that is how I was taught it, but like I said, as I previously stated, there are different lineages. So, swords, I'd be looking at autumn. And I could look at Gemini season depending on the card. So I could look at spring, particular where Gemini is, or I could be pulling these cards in autumn, at which point I would be looking at, or periods, also periods of mental clarity where things are difficult or challenging, which could also be Mercury retrograde or Saturn energy. If you're dealing with a Saturn retrograde or Saturn season, which is basically Capricorn season, this would be the ideal time to work with the suit of swords. So you could also, like I said, you could do it elementally by a season. Fall, you start working with the swords. And keep doing that until we get to about winter, which would be the earth season, which point then you could work with pentacles. So that's one way of doing it, not the only way of doing it. So I encourage reflection here. So each sword card can mirror one's current state. So which one mirrors your current state? Are you experiencing clarity or conflict or rest or anxiety or a necessary ending? Where are you on your sword's journey? And we're going to wrap this up. So the key takeaway is that swords remind us that truth cuts both ways. Clarity is essential, yes, and it must be tempered with kindness, with empathy, with compassion, or the blade wounds both wielder and target. And so here's a call to action. So draw a sword card and journal on a difficult truth you've been avoiding. How might acknowledging this truth liberate you? And the next episode coming up is The Suit of Water, where we explore emotion, intuition, relationships, and the depths of feeling. Thank you very much for your presence here today and your continued presence. It is appreciated. And if you'd be so kind, please like and share the podcast. If you're liking and reviewing, give us 5 stars so others can find us wherever you happen to listen to podcasts, and share it wildly also so people can find us, and that makes it that much better for me as the content creator. So thank you very much, and until next time, keep your feet on the ground and your eyes to the stars. Thank you, star people.